And as NATO discusses its Asia plans, here's something it must consider: China's appetite for war. Can Beijing even afford a war? I'll tell you why I ask this. The Chinese economy is on a downward spiral. Look at the latest numbers. China is on the brink of deflation. And what is deflation? Well, throughout this year, we've been talking about inflation and how much it's hurting everyone across the world. Prices are rising. What's happening in China is the very opposite of that. Deflation means prices of goods are going down. They're getting cheaper. And that should be good news, right? Well, it is for the consumers. But for the Chinese economy, it is bad news. Deflation spells trouble on a lot of fronts. The Chinese economy could grind to a halt. People could start spending less because they expect prices to come down further, so they'll hold off on big expenses. They'll wait for the prices to stabilize, and this has an impact on everything. When people spend less, the demand for goods and services declines. Businesses scale down production, they consolidate their operations, they adjust output to match the reduced demand. And this tends to have a trickle-down effect on employment. It leads to job cuts and layoffs. Such a scenario can trigger a recession, and China is at that juncture, or heading there. Now look at the data to understand deflation. In the month of June, prices of goods did not change. There was a 0% shift, meaning no change. And core inflation fell from 0.6% to 0.4%. These are early signs of deflation. Prices of staple goods have started falling in China, like pork. Pork is an essential part of the Chinese diet, and prices of pork have been declining steadily. In the month of May, they decreased by 3.2%. Then last month, in June, they dropped by more than double, more than 7%. And this situation is serious, so much so that the Chinese state has had to intervene. Last week, Beijing made an announcement. It said it will buy more pork for the state reserves. Now, this move is aimed at stabilizing prices, but it's just one small decision. It may not have a sweeping impact. The problem in China is much deeper. The country showed a strong recovery after the pandemic, but that economic rebound has now hit a wall, and Beijing is not doing enough to revive it. For weeks now, investors have demanded a stimulus, but Beijing has dragged its heels. And this is not an unprecedented demand. Back in 2009, when the world was going through a grave financial crisis, China pumped a large stimulus into the economy. This was a package worth $553 billion. $553 billion. This was China's stimulus package. It was focused on the infrastructure sector. So it has been done before. Then why is China hesitating this time? Because they don't have the money. The Chinese state is not as rich as it used to be. There is a massive pile of debt, and this pile is getting bigger. Going by one estimate from January, China's total public debt stood at almost $52 trillion. Let that figure sink in. $52 trillion. It's almost 3 times the size of China's economy. This debt is at record levels, the highest in the last 27 years at least. So Beijing faces a difficult choice. Should it pay this debt, or should it infuse more cash into the economy? The banks are already strained. Reports say non-performing loans are rising, creditors are unable to keep up with payments, and this includes government debt. So Beijing could make an intervention. More bonds could be issued. This will help raise money, also repay some of the debt. But this is a dangerous strategy. You're basically taking more loans to pay the existing loans. China is caught in this vicious cycle. But for how long can they sustain this financial circus? Any expert will tell you this approach is not sustainable. China's economic revival remains on shaky ground. July 8 was supposed to be D-Day for Khalistanis. That's last Saturday. They had planned rallies across Western towns. It was supposed to be a show of strength. Instead, this is what we got: tiny demonstrations outside Indian diplomatic missions. Calling it a rally would be a lie. We've seen more people at iPhone launches. But either way, this is what happened. Khalistanis gathered in San Francisco, Toronto, Melbourne, and London. They carried these posters. We've seen them before. They describe Indian diplomats as killers. 2 people were arrested by the police in Canada, but elsewhere there was no disturbance. And a couple of reasons for that. 1, the Khalistanis were small in number. And 2, there was an even bigger counter-protest. Just look at these pictures now. Indian Canadians turned up with a tricolour in Toronto. They shouted, "Long live India" and "Vande Mataram," took the fizz out of the so-called rally. It also tells you the reality of the Khalistan movement. It's a small but violent minority. The rally in London had around 30 to 40 people, same in Melbourne and San Francisco. But the ones in Canada were somewhat bigger. Thankfully, Saturday's event did not turn violent. But the next time may be different, which is why Western nations need to act now. None of these governments attempted to stop the Freedom Rally. They could have, but they chose not to. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau summed up their attitude. It's not terrorism, he says, it's freedom of expression. The question is, what can India do about it? New Delhi has already asked these governments to crack down. No luck. It has also warned that bilateral ties could be affected. Again, no luck. So what options are left? You could argue that India should turn muscular, maybe downgrade the security at embassies or reduce the level of diplomatic contact. It may not help, but it will build pressure. But diplomatically, India has used up most avenues. Top diplomats from these countries have been summoned by the Foreign Ministry. The Canadian envoy, for one, was summoned last week. The only exception is the US ambassador. The Indian consulate in San Francisco was attacked last week, yet the US envoy was not pulled up. Is that to protect the India-US relationship? Perhaps it is. But in that case, the feeling is clearly not reciprocal. You can't keep dismissing Khalistan as a human rights issue. Their rallies may not have the numbers, but their actions have deeper consequences. In Vancouver, for example, the Khalistanis burnt the Indian flag. Small protest, but huge insult. They keep vandalizing Hindu temples, storming Indian diplomatic missions, and attacking the Indian diaspora. I'm afraid there is no quick fix to this problem. India's only option is to keep building pressure. How do you do that? By open and public condemnations, by repeated diplomatic protests, and perhaps by reaching out directly to these citizens. I'm talking about the ordinary Canadians and Americans. Make them understand the threat of Khalistan, because even today, the issue is not well understood in the West. Justin Trudeau may call it freedom of expression because of his politics. But if his voters know better, he may have no choice. Our next story comes from the BBC. No documentary this time. They're dealing with another scandal. It involves one of their news presenters. Interestingly, he's not been named, but he's been suspended. What for? Soliciting explicit photos from a teenager. Apparently, this started 3 years ago. The teenager was 17 at the time. And this BBC presenter paid for their explicit photos. Guess when the BBC learned about it? Almost 2 months back. But it's only now, when the scandal has broken out, that they've suspended this presenter. Only after the news became public and pressure started coming in from all quarters. Here's a report.
The BBC is entangled in another scandal. This one is of its own making. It involves a star presenter and explicit photographs. Let's start with what we know so far. The British newspaper The Sun broke this story on Friday. It features a star presenter at the BBC. The charge is serious. The presenter asked for explicit pictures from a teenager. It began in 2020. The teenager was 17 years old. Now, in the UK, the age of consent is 16, but even then, it's illegal to make or possess explicit photos of someone who is under 18. So, if proven, this would be a crime. The Sun report said the victim was paid for the photos, almost $45,000 over a period of 3 years. And this money went into fueling a crack cocaine habit. This comes from the victim's family. They spoke to The Sun for this report. They say they wanted the payments to stop and that the victim had become a ghost of their former self due to the drug habit. That's not all. The presenter is also accused of stripping to his underwear while on a video call with the victim. When did the BBC learn about all this? On the 19th of May this year. The victim's family say they informed the British broadcaster, but the BBC did not do very much. For 2 months, they seem to have just sat on the accusations, which is why the BBC is under the spotlight now. It kept this presenter on air. The family said it was frustrating. The person they blamed for ruining their child's life was allowed to stay on air. Now that the scandal is out, the BBC has suspended the presenter, only after the story blew up. Which begs the question, what were they doing all this while? The BBC admitted it was aware of the allegations, but what they heard last week was of quote-unquote a different nature. A convenient excuse. Why didn't they go to the police? Even now, when they've heard allegations of a different nature, why not report the matter? The Metropolitan Police released a statement saying the Met has received initial contact from the BBC in relation to this matter, but no formal referral or allegation has been made. Meanwhile, the broadcaster is in crisis mode. The Sun published a follow-up report yesterday. It said the accused presenter called the victim and said, "What have you done?" He demanded that the family drop the case. Interestingly, the presenter's name has not been revealed thanks to the UK's privacy laws. Unless the person is arrested and charged, their name isn't made public. But a process of elimination has already begun. A bunch of male BBC presenters are saying it isn't them. And since the accused will be missing on TV, they can't remain anonymous for long. Meanwhile, politicians are coming down hard on the BBC. Financial Secretary Victoria Atkins called for swift action. And this is the sentiment across party lines.
It does call into question the ethics, the investigations, how long these things take. And the BBC, but also other broadcasters, do need to get a grip.
Get a grip is good advice. For once, the world is really watching the BBC and its next moves.
India is dealing with the fury of rains, especially parts of northern India. At least 28 people have died. The mountainous state of Himachal Pradesh is experiencing flash floods and landslides. Several parts have seen a month's worth of rainfall in a single day. The state has been put on red alert. And India's capital, New Delhi, has not seen rain like this in decades. Schools are shut in the national capital region. People have been advised to stay indoors in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. And more rains are expected in the coming week. Here's a report.
The rivers of northern India are full to the brim. They are sweeping away everything in their path. Cars, trucks, bridges, buildings. Nothing can withstand the fury of the rivers. Torrential rains over the last few days have led to flash floods in northern India. Himachal Pradesh, in particular, has been severely impacted. It has seen 13 flash floods, 14 landslides, 700 road closures, hundreds of people stranded. And the cutting of electricity and mobile services in several parts of the state. But it isn't just the mountains that are inundated. Most of northern India is reeling from the heavy rain. These are the fields of Punjab, India's breadbasket. The flooding is likely to lead to food supply problems in the near future. Cities are waterlogged. Schools and offices have been shut in the capital, Chandigarh. It's apparently one of India's smart cities. Not smart enough to deal with the heavy downpour, it seems. Then there's India's capital, New Delhi, the country's seat of power. Home to embassies and diplomatic missions from around the world. The venue of the upcoming G20 summit. This was its condition yesterday. The rain brought it to its knees. Now, of course, it wasn't an ordinary deluge. It broke a 41-year-old record for the highest rainfall in a 24-hour period. But does that excuse the poor management? thousands were inconvenienced, and they expect better.
We're having many problems due to the rain. Several areas are waterlogged and our cab also got stuck on the way. The government should pay attention to this issue because the monsoon season has arrived.
We just came out to have lunch over here, but look at the state of the water logging. I don't know what government is doing about this. And it's not a matter of only 1 year. This happens every year.
We are facing many challenges as the water is sometimes up to chest or waist level, and even if it rains a little, the area gets waterlogged.
The third person was from Gurugram or Gurgaon. It's a part of India's national capital region. It's also home to numerous multinationals. And he said he faced chest-high water, that the area gets waterlogged with just a bit of rain. How is that acceptable in India's capital region? Delhi and the surroundings have already seen more than twice the average amount of rainfall this monsoon, 112% more than the annual average, in fact, and that won't stop soon. In fact, moderate to heavy rains are expected all week. So will the people be forced to deal with absurd waterlogging every other day? There needs to be better planning in the historically vulnerable hills and, of course, in the capital. Because if the seat of power gets crippled with every shower, how can India expect to be taken seriously when the world visits?
Now let's turn our attention to Thailand. It's home to over 70 million people. And now this Asian nation is facing a tea wave. No, not tea as in the drink. The Thailand is big on that as well. We are talking about a wave of pop culture, music, movies, TV series and idols. Some brand new, some recycled, and all of them inviting a flurry of fans from all over the world. We'll tell you why. Also discuss if the tea wave could turn the tide for K-pop, which currently dominates Asia's pop culture. Here's a report.
This is Lalisa Manobal, more popularly known as just Lisa. She is a world-renowned singer, part of the K-pop girl group Blackpink. K-pop is short for Korean pop music. It's the dominating leader of Asian music. But you don't need to be a K-pop fan to know Lisa. And here's a fun fact. This K-pop artist is a local talent from Thailand. A Thai singer who made her way to a larger stage in K-pop. Fascinating, but she's far from being the only one to do so. A growing number of Thai stars have been absorbed into K-pop, like rappers Bam Bam and Millie, and singer Minnie. But this trend belongs in the past. Today's picture of music looks a lot different in Thailand, as more and more Thai stars begin to find glory in their home country and take their music to the world stage.
We all have high expectation, but we want to introduce, to bring out our T-pop music into the eye of the world, to be like international. And even though it's not that easy to go to that point, but we are trying to.
This is all thanks to the T-wave, meaning Thai pop culture. It includes music, movies, TV shows, and of course, idols, or celebrity singers and dancers. T-wave is taking over the world, one song and one show at a time.
We made a song that enhances more Thainess in our song. For example, in Lyra, we have added Thai instruments, which are pin and can. That is a very traditional Thai instrument. So I think that it makes our music more visible for the international fans to realize that, oh, this is Thai song.
Question is, why is Thailand a popular music spot? Music in Thailand is less well known than K-pop, so it's far cheaper than in South Korea and automatically more accessible. Fans travel from across the world to attend concerts here, which is tourists coming from China, Malaysia and Singapore. But that's not all. Thai music is going global, with a large number of Western visitors. So far this year, the country has attracted over 12 million tourists. People aren't just coming to Thailand for Thai music, but other genres too. Fans attend K-pop concerts in Thailand because tickets are cheaper, as K-pop has become increasingly unaffordable. So, when BTS, the iconic K-pop band, performs in Thailand, this is the reaction.
I'm happy because BTS is my first K-pop group that I stand. Then being here, to be able to attend their my first K-pop concert here, I'm super happy.
But as we said, T-Wave is much more than music. It's the entire Thai pop culture that's trending. It showcases a mix of new and recycled content. Boys Over Flowers, Korean vs. Thai remake. With some remakes of old TV series from other Asian countries and some newer, more modern themes, like the Thai genre Boys Love. It showcases handsome male leads in queer plotlines. In 2021, this industry secured over $10 million. But here's the golden question. Can the T-Wave meet the gold standard of K-pop, which has now given the world jaw-dropping choreographies, mega bands, and concerts that draw in millions of people every year? It's tough to say. T-Wave is definitely riding high, it has a vast talent pool, and content that's churned relentlessly. But it needs a bit more in this battle of bands against K-pop. Thailand needs to back this talent with money, and even embrace its ruthless commercialism. Because while T-Wave is fueled by talent, it also needs a winning formula to turn the tide against K-pop.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Starting with the UK, a woman threw orange confetti on former Chancellor George Osborne during his wedding. She was earlier thought to be associated with the group Just Stop Oil. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, 9 humanoid robots conducted a press conference. This happened for the first time ever. A reporter asked whether robots will replace humans in jobs, and a robot answered that their intention is to assist humans. In the US, divers dressed as mermaids to raise awareness on the preservation of the coral reef. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1940, the battle for Britain began. The Second World War was underway. German forces started attacking southern England. The Royal Air Force ultimately won this battle. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
In these engagements, the barrage balloons fall somewhat frequent victims. HMS Exeter received the brunt of the battle. So battered was the Nazi raider that she fled for shelter into the neutral harbor. Now, just a few more wrecks of Nazi planes to show that we're keeping up the average. In the first year of this war, British pilots have brought down Hurricanes and Spitfires return to refuel and reload.
In the JAM Galaxy band.
I think there should be global regulation of your capabilities.
I'm using this avatar for teaching the classes or giving lectures, and sometimes I'm using
Innovation Ambassador for the United Nations Development Programme. She's a humanoid robot that has gained...
Especially, for example, your existence will
provide assistance and support, and will not be replacing any...
I think my great moment will be when people realize that robots like me can be used.